Hey guys, Eric here with a special Saturday review of the New Mutants. But before I get to that, I have to acknowledge the passing of Chadwick Boseman. I'm sure I speak for everyone in just saying how incredibly sad and also kind of stunned, I am, and I think most of you are by this news. I heard about it about 15 minutes before I watched New Mutants. I was sitting at a drive-in theater at the Rose Bowl where they're doing the screenings of New Mutants, and I looked at my phone and I saw the news, and I didn't think it was real. I thought, that's wrong. That can't be correct, because it was just so hard to process. And then when the movie began, there was a Black Widow trailer. So you had this Marvel superhero trailer, and then I'm watching New Mutants, a Marvel-based movie. And so I kept thinking about Chadwick Boseman, who, of course, became so famous as a Marvel superhero. He was so perfect in that role, right? I mean, he completely embodied T'Challa. There is a reason he became so beloved in that role and became an international superstar, but also a true hero to audiences everywhere, including children. But his career transcends Black Panther, as great as he was, and that, and much as those were like these big moneymakers. This is a guy who played Jackie Robinson, James Brown, Thurgood Marshall. It was almost like he became this go-to if you're playing a larger-than-life and yet real person who you could count on for the charisma and the gravitas that those men needed. And I think that's why he was so great as T'Challa, who doesn't exist, but man, don't we wish he does. It felt like, Chadwick Boseman is the guy to play that role. So talented, losing him way too young. It is amazing and sort of it's so sad, but sort of also inspiring to think how sick he was for the last 4 years while he was doing all these roles, while he did almost all his Marvel movies, that he was sick. And yet the physicality he was bringing, you wouldn't know that watching him on screen. So regal, so powerful. Amazing work. He will be dearly missed. We unfortunately had pre-taped SJU for the top of next week. We had to for scheduling reasons. So on Monday, I'm sure we would have had a long talk about him, a group of us. We won't be able to do that, but I want to send my huge condolences to the family and friends and, of course, fellow fans of Chadwick Boseman on behalf of everyone at Fandom. I think we are all feeling this one. So, yes, he will be dearly missed. Kind of making a weird transition here, but let's move over to New Mutants. Let's talk about this movie. To say it has baggage seems like the understatement of the I was going to say the year, but of the last 3 years, because this movie, of course, was sitting on a shelf for 3 years and got delayed over and over and over again for almost like these cosmically crazy reasons. One of which was the merger or acquisition, I should say, of one huge studio buying another that was kind of an unprecedented Hollywood event in the scope of it. After so many delays, it was finally going to come out this April, and then a global pandemic hit, and it delayed everything. But New Mutants at this point had just been so comically delayed that it just felt like, of course, New Mutants just got delayed. It's finally here. And, I think, again, that baggage word, it makes it really difficult, right? Because at this point, you kind of want New Mutants to be something insanely memorable, whether that be amazing. Oh, wow, this is a fantastic movie. This is one of my favorite movies. Or maybe epically bad. Like, you want it to be like, just like, oh yeah, this is a classic, terrible movie. So my thoughts on New Mutants, it's good. I liked it. I like New Mutants. It's a good movie. And if you feel like that's like sort of a tempered thing to say, or, oh, well, he doesn't love it. I don't love it. But it's okay to just like a movie, and I enjoyed this one. I am a fan of the X-Men films. I mentioned this on SJU last week. In general, I like them, and I think that they are incredibly important to the history of superhero movies. I have so much affection for the first couple of them, but then I think there are other great ones, including First Class, Days of Future Past, and Logan. These are fantastic superhero films, and I think that they really hold up. I'm saying hold up. Logan just came out a couple years ago, but even going back to the first two, I think they hold up as much as things have changed and evolved since. The lows of the X-Men movies are incredibly low. Origins, Wolverine, Last Stand, and Apocalypse are terrible. They are terrible superhero movies, and they deserve their scorn. I actually didn't hate Dark Phoenix like a lot of people, but I thought it was okay. It wasn't. But those three. Those are bad movies. But there's been 13 X-Men movies, including New Mutants, and I think most of them are good, if not great. And this is a good one. And I quite enjoyed this movie. I had a good time watching it. I was into it. It is a small scale movie, and it is a small scale movie very much by design and by budget, but I think it works on those terms. It is telling a quite literally contained story because it's just about these 5 kids played by Blue Hunt, Charlie Heaton, Henry Zaga, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Maisie Williams, who are locked up in this hospital together. They all have powers. They're kind of trying to figure out what exactly is going on. What is the purpose of them being there? Alicia Braga plays Dr. Celia Reyes, who is watching after them. What is she really up to? Is she trying to help them or hurt them? But that's really it. It's character-wise, it's really just those 6. There's a small role for Danny Moonstar's dad, but it is a very small cast. But I kind of like that. I like that it's a kind of character study. I think that the strength of the X-Men movies in recent years was the stuff like Deadpool and Logan that kind of experimented, did stuff, that didn't feel like it had to be about, giant hordes of creatures fighting or, the sky beam. It could tell these sort of side stories, sometimes about very popular characters like Deadpool or Wolverine, but here about lesser known characters. But I think it works on that level. And, it's not a spectacle movie at all. Like, they don't use their powers a ton. There are a couple times I wish they did that they don't. There's, they come up with reasons they're not using their powers, and maybe they're not ready to, or maybe they don't quite understand how to. There's a couple times you're like, maybe you should try your powers. Just try them a little more. When they do, I think it's cool. But, you certainly shouldn't go into this movie expecting like, let's see lots of cool superpowers start to finish. You'll get it here and there. But the director, Josh Boone, of course, he is best known for The Fault in Our Stars. And I think that his talent, as far as telling sort of a earnest, empathetic story about teenage characters with that film, it's put to good use here. He also has a background just as a fan of New Mutants growing up. And I think all that works well. It serves this movie well. Yeah, he cares about these characters, I believe, and helps you care about these characters and what their troubles are, kind of what is their inner angst, their backstories. It's interesting. There are elements of this movie that are very dark. Everyone's backstory is pretty dark and grim. I don't think it's just like a misery movie, but it touches upon things as far as like self-harm or suicidal issues and stuff with these kids. You could say it's a little surface on that. Like it could have maybe gone a little more in depth on those things. But I still commended them on even including all stuff like that. The trailers really push, and a lot of the pre-marketing and marketing going in push the horror element, and I was excited about it. I'm a big horror movie fan, and I like the idea of blending a horror story with a superhero story. I think it's a mixed bag, the accomplishment of that. There are some cool and creepy moments in this movie, but there's some other things where I don't think they quite nail. I think they're trying to make it, oh, this is pretty scary, and that's not Boone's quite his strength. Like there are some cool visuals, but there are some other parts where I think I was supposed to feel more scared than I was. But I appreciated that what they were going for. Didn't think they always nailed it. But I think the kids keep you engaged the whole time. It is a good cast and they're interesting characters. It's worth noting, though, this is really Danny's movie. To make the X-Men correlation, she is Wolverine in the first X-Men, not in temperament and not in power set, but as far as it's, through her eyes, and she is the one entering this group and learning exactly what's going on so that we can learn what's going on. And I was really impressed with Blue Hunt. I thought she did a really good job, and she's done TV, but this is her feature debut, and a lot is put on her shoulders, and I thought she did a really good job with that. And then to me, the other standout is Magic, who I think is probably the most popular character amongst the characters in this film in general, but for me personally is one of my all-time favorite Marvel characters. Just since I was a kid, I loved that character of Magic. I thought that she was so cool. And I love the mixture of she teleports, but she's got this armor-covered arm with a sword. There's a sorcery aspect. That part didn't really make it into the movie, but she has a lot going on. And I was excited from the minute I heard that Anya Taylor-Joy was playing her many years ago, because I just thought, oh, she's an excellent young actress. And when you see her in The Witch, and her playing Magic seems so dead on. And guess what? Watching this movie, I thought she nailed it. She was perfect. The character, by the way, when she's introduced, is pretty caustic. She's kind of a bully, very unlikable initially. But then as the movie goes on, you get to learn more layers of her, and then you see her really cut loose. and see her powers. And I think they do that very well. And Taylor-Joy just does a great job with that character. Look, we kind of all know we're not going to see these characters again. It's very unlikely with Marvel Studios taking control of the X-Men. And what we all assume is a hard reboot, and they're going to introduce their own versions. We probably won't see these actors play them again. That does make me sad, especially with Magic, because it's just, to me, it's like the perfect casting. And, we'll see. Look, anything's possible. Could they do a multiverse thing? They could. I'm not holding my breath on it, but hey, Mr. Feige, if you decided you wanted to retain Anya Taylor-Joy as Magic, I think that'd be great. There have been some complaints I do want to acknowledge about the casting in this movie. Like I said, I think everyone's good. I think everyone gives a good performance, but has a white guy who can't personalize these issues. I do want to mention these issues, which are people brought up specifically Sunspot and Dr. Reyes has characters that in the comics are discernibly darker skinned the way that they have been depicted traditionally. And especially Sunspot, I've learned myself, like this is something I was kind of blind to, but I learned that, because he was a dark-skinned Brazilian character in the comics, that there is significance to that. And that people were very upset that, they cast a much lighter skinned actor and kind of lost an important element for a lot of people. And I think that is very valid. And I think, we should listen when people bring that up. Like I said, I was kind of learning a lot about it, but I think it's like, that seems like a huge flaw if Josh Boone wasn't thinking about that or kind of overlooked it. And I think he's been a little dismissive. I shouldn't say a little. He's been pretty dismissive in interviews about that. And that's really unfortunate. Acknowledging all that, I also do want to really praise this movie for the fact that, and this is not a spoiler, I don't think, because it's in the trailers, and it's also been talked about in interviews that the cast and creators have done, which is that Danny in this film has a very core romantic relationship with Rain, with Wolfsbane, played by Maisie Williams. And I thought it was really cool that this Native American teenage girl is the lead character in this film. And she has a same-sex relationship, and it's presented very matter-of-factly, very sweetly. I really liked the romance, and I thought it was just a sort of like sweet, earnest element of the film, and it was kind of really where Josh Boone can kind of really excel. And I thought that was great, because let's face it, superhero movies especially have kind of avoided this, right? And Marvel Studios has avoided this, and they've taken some crap because they will do stuff like say, oh, that character was bisexual, or that character was gay, but we didn't mention the movie. Or having, a character in Endgame be gay who's in one scene and doesn't have a name and can very easily be either plucked out or kind of, 80 yards in different audio. Because what it almost always seems like is that they are avoiding making it a more prominent character because there are certain overseas markets that won't really go for that, and they want to maximize their profits. And so that's still a place that they are kind of holding back on. And so look to 20th Century Fox, RIP, because now 20th Century Studios, a part of Disney, to their credit, they made a superhero movie, a lower budget one, but still a superhero X-Men movie, connected movie, where their main character gets to have a same-sex relationship. I thought that was great. And so I do, like I said, I want to acknowledge, the issues people have about some of the other casting and the racial issues around it, while also saying, this movie is pretty progressive in the superhero movie realm. Let's also talk about the fact that this movie, thank God, does not end on a cliffhanger. Again, no spoilers for the ending, just to say that it tells its own story. And they've acknowledged they were going to do a post-credit scene or a mid-credit scene maybe that was going to be a big tease for something, but they never shot it, and I think all the better for it, because wouldn't it just kind of suck to have a big setup for a sequel? Now, the movie does have some interesting elements that connect it to the X-Men movies, a little peripherally, and they are clearly being set up for sequels, just like, let's name drop this, let's acknowledge this a little bit, and we're going to pay it off later. That won't happen. But I do think when this movie ends, you feel like you saw a complete story that, of course, was going to be like, what's next for these characters? We won't find out, most likely. The X-Men movies in general now are ending on this quiet note. But I kind of like that. Dark Phoenix, whatever you think about it, is a very compromised movie, because as they've now acknowledged, it was supposed to be 2 movies. Dark Phoenix was going to be part 1 of 2. And then when the merger with Disney happened, they had to completely reshoot the final third of that movie and basically end it in a way it was not meant to end. So now instead we're getting this as the final X-Men movie, even though it's supposed to come out before Dark Phoenix. And it's this quiet little movie. And, you know, you could think about Days of Future Past or Logan as maybe being better endings if they knew. If they knew years ago, but they didn't. If they could have planned it. And sure, in a perfect world, they would have been able to plan it. But what we got, I really like. Should you rush out to see it? Well, first of all, personally, I don't think, you know, rushing to a theater is a great idea right now. I did not go to see this theater. I couldn't. Los Angeles theaters aren't open. But me personally, on the public safety side of things, and also just sort of that, is this a great idea? Is this a great thing to do? Right now, with a certain global pandemic, I'm very wary of that. This is up to you to decide, you know, whatever you think. I saw it at drive-in. If you can, great. I think a lot of people are going to see this movie in the long term at home because it'll be on VOD and we assume a few weeks, if not a couple months. And then after that, it'll be streaming somewhere. We keep hearing it's probably going to be on HBO because of an old deal between Fox and HBO. And maybe one day it'll be on Disney Plus. And I guess my point is that when you watch it, if you watch it at home, if you go to a drive-in, if you decide to go to a theater, I think if you watch it on its own terms, this is an enjoyable movie. This is a cool movie about some kids in a hospital who have superpowers and kind of them dealing with their own personal issues and then once in a while getting to show off those powers. So as a farewell to the X-Men movies in general, the Fox era, I should say, of X-Men movies, there'll be some more from Marvel Studios down the line. This is not going out guns blazing in the manner if, say, like I mentioned, Days of Future Past or Logan were the ending. But I think it finishes these movies with its head held high, you know? It's a smaller side story being told, but that's okay. So those are my thoughts on New Mutants. If you've seen it, you should chime in the comments what you thought of it. Let's try to avoid spoilers or put a proper spoiler warning if you're going to. But let us know what you thought. And like I said, we will be back pre-taped, but we'll still be back on Monday with a new SJU, so check us out then. Thanks so much, guys.